Hello everyone and welcome back to another Photo Mishmash, your weekly source for any and all things photo. I'm Christina.
And I'm Toby.
And this is episode 38.
Get More 24. We talk about a new camera from Sony that offers a first for full-frame cameras. And we bring the show back to its roots, Mishmash. See all this stuff? We're going to talk about all of it.
Let's jump right in. Do you want to talk a little bit about our sponsor this week?
Sure. Well, I just want to mention that we still have our offer with Squarespace. Squarespace.com/Toby will get you 10% off and a 14-week free trial. Now, I mentioned this last week, but we didn't actually get to the discussion piece. We are going to be talking a little bit about portfolios this week and the importance of having a professional-looking portfolio. And there really is no easier way than using Squarespace. So take a few moments, watch my video on how to build a Squarespace portfolio, or just how to build a portfolio in general, because there's a lot of good tips in that video. Just happens to be using Squarespace because it is such an easy platform to work with. And I also had a question this week, I think it was Roger who asked, does Squarespace conform to accessibility standards? And with a little bit of Googling, I didn't find
accessibility standards?
Accessibility standards. So, you know, like for, as photographers, we don't usually care too much about this, but if you're thinking about making a website for another purpose, you want it to be accessible to people using screen readers, visually impaired, things like that. And I couldn't find any expressly information that said, yes, we are, but I did find a huge advocate for accessibility is running their blog on Squarespace. So I think that's a good sign. I'm going to take that as a good sign. I know that the code behind the scenes in Squarespace is good and clean, but whether or not it conforms to all of the latest standards, I can't say for sure.
Well, but it is cross-browser, cross-platform, and cross-device compatible.
Right.
So I would imagine that there is a lot of accessibility. It's a matter of the designer and the person that is putting together the website to incorporate that into their design.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to point out is just how nicely it works across all of the devices.
Yeah. That's really important.
Yep.
Okay, so the week in review, this week you reviewed the 24mm Pancake Canon lens.
That's right. This little teeny prime lens right here, 24mm. It's an EFS lens. Now, I had a couple people comment and, you know, were confused because I said this expressly in the video. On a crop sensor, this 24mm equates to about 38 millimeters. I think it's 38.8 if you want to get really specific. People say, wait a second, it's an EFS lens. You don't have to do that multiplication. No, you do. I agree, it's confusing, it's weird. Why put a full frame equivalent millimeter marking on a lens that can never be used on a full frame? Put a little asterisk after that. That's just how it works. All lenses you put on your camera need to be. There are no lenses that I know of that are marked with the what you get. It is what it would be on a full frame. You know, sum up my review. This is, well, actually, I didn't say this in the review. People reminded me of this in the comments. I mean, this is a match made in heaven for the SL1. I felt that way a lot about the 40. The SL1, of course, is Canon's smallest little DSLR. But the 40 is a little tight in some circumstances. This is a more general purpose walk-around prime lens, and paired with the SL1, you have the smallest DSLR on the planet, lens and body. You know, one of the complaints about the SL1 when it came out was like, yeah, it's small, but as soon as you put any of these lenses on it, it's not so small. But now we got two good options for walking around. One person said they keep their SL1 in their car with them at all times, and the 40, and now this too. It's a nice lens. You know, I'll be honest, I'm a little underwhelmed by it, not because it's not nice. It's very good quality. It is better quality than the kit lens. But, you know, it's not as exciting as the longer range primes when you compare it to the kit, because there's a serious difference in your f-stop. You know, when you're shooting at 50mm with the nifty 50, that's f1.8. When you're shooting at 50mm with a kit lens, you're at f5.6. That is a huge difference. Literally can be night and day. Here we're talking about a stop difference, which for some people can be very important, but obviously is not as big as a bigger stop difference. So, it's very nice, it's small, it's a great walk-around lens. It's certainly something you should consider. And along with that, you know, I go back and forth. What is the prime lens that I recommend for folks to own? One of the things that I do with this site is...
And actually, that was one of the questions for this week, one of the viewer questions.
Oh.
Which one would you recommend if you had to pick one?
I want to know more about you as a photographer. It's really... I go back and forth. You know, there have been different times where I've said this is the one to get, but here's what I say. You want a good general walk-around prime that makes your camera really small? 24mm right now is really, really lovely. You want better depth of field control and better performance in low light? That Sigma 30 f1.4, the newest one, is better, is a pick. The 40mm has the benefit of making your camera small as well, but gives you just a little bit more focal length so you can see a little bit more of your control over the depth of field. And then the 51.8, which for the money is an awesome value, but on a crop sensor, it can be very frustrating to use, especially for beginners. I mean, that's the lens most of the time you talk to your coworkers and you say, I'm thinking about getting a DSLR, or I got a DSLR, and they're like, oh, you got to get the 50. On crop sensor, inside, you know, unless you live in a mansion, I've said this before. It's
limiting.
It's limiting. You're going to feel yourself hitting the wall literally as you back up to try to get to frame the shot you want. And again,
here's what I would say.
Yep.
I would say don't limit yourself to just one. I think that these lenses are so affordable and such a great value for what they are that, you know, if you're looking to have a prime, you know, if you're looking to have a prime because you want depth of field, because you want a really shallow depth of field, then I would definitely go with the 50, no question, because that's what you're looking for. You're not really looking for something to be small. You're not, you know, if you're looking for compact, for a compact prime, I would go with the 24 and maybe the 40, or the 24 and maybe the 50, but not either or. I mean, they are different purpose lenses, so I don't think that one is enough. Yeah. You know, it would be awesome if one could do everything. And you could potentially, you know, just challenge yourself to shoot at one focal length for a really long time. I think you get bored of that. So yeah, I don't think one's enough to answer that question.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, it's hard to know when to stop the discussion because we just touched on a couple, but there are others, the 24 and the 28mm f2.8 ISs. There's the Sigma 30 I mentioned. Somebody said, hey, what about the Canon Macro 60 f2.8? So there's a lot of different ones. I touch on most of those in my little summary write-up review. So I'll put a link to that right down below, but it's on the blog, it's up there, and take a few moments and read through. I do short, sweet summaries of each of the lenses we just mentioned.
Yep. So what's next on our...
I thought you were running the rundown.
Yeah, but then I got a little distracted talking about the 24. I didn't plan to talk about that. So Canon primes. You talked about Canon primes this week.
Talked about Canon primes. So, oh, well, I also mentioned that, well, you know what's interesting is that this is EF, 24 is EFS only, we covered that. The 40 is EF, it'll go on full frame camera. And, you know, somebody wrote me and said, do you think there's any way to be able to modify it so it can fit?
A full frame camera?
Yes, on a full frame camera.
No.
People do. There are people that...
You lose a huge part of the frame.
Grind down. Well, here's what is interesting. As you all know, is it out of my reach? I have been reviewing or working with the Nikon D750 over the last a week. This is going to be a longer term review that comes out in a couple of weeks. Really nice camera. Hard to say anything negative about this camera, except don't touch the ribbon under the little LCD. I got along 2 full frame lenses with it, but I also happen to have in the house the Nikon 40mm prime. It is a DX lens. That's Nikon's equivalent of EFS. However, Nikon is different in their mounts. It will mount. You don't have to do any modification. And it depends on how close you're focusing, but there are times where you can basically have no vignetting with a DX lens. So there are some focal lengths and focusing distances where you do not get vignetting. It will work. which is quite interesting because now I got this really cheap little teeny prime I can walk around with on my full frame camera and get pretty good results. Also, some of you who might be really paying close attention say, oh, the D750's got a DX mode. Are you sure it's not just switching into DX mode? No, I turned that off and it still works. Because there are, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But there are other times where you do see the vignetting, so. But
what's the point? Why not just get the full frame equivalent of that?
In this case? Or in the
Nikon case, or in any case.
I happen to have it, so I'm excited. That's my only reason. If I had not already had that lens and wanted a macro, I certainly would have gotten a full frame. For this person, they want this tiny size. There's nothing in this size range for a full frame at 24 millimeters. Cheryl asked me to compare this 24 EFS to the 24L. That is a monster of a lens. I mean, it's almost as much as the 85 in weight.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge, but it also shoots at f1.4. It also costs $1,400, I think, somewhere in that range. So $149 versus $1,400. But I can see why somebody wants to try this on full frame, and it says in some cases no, there's no vignetting. I know that's also true. Third-party lenses will often mount on full frame cameras, and I've heard that people do use the Sigma 18 to 35, which is like a bag full of prime. So if you're really struggling which prime is right for you and you have the budget, that Sigma 18 to 35 is the answer. Gives you that much versatility. You do see some vignetting if you're using it on a full frame camera down below, I think like 20. So then you really...
But that's correct. You can correct that.
No, I'm sorry. You see the circle below 20 because that
on a full frame camera.
Yes, because that's a crop sensor lens.
Yeah. See, I think it's not. I don't think it's wise to buy a cropped sensor lens when you have a full frame camera.
I agree, but
because you're still. I mean, the point is that you're. I guess what was I? No, see, that wouldn't make sense. What I was thinking was kind of backwards. I was thinking that you may be better off just buying the regular full frame lens because of the crop factor, but that doesn't really make any sense. No. So, yeah, I know.
Most people don't do it, but there are some people out there that like to tinker.
I mean, what about the Tamron? The Tamron 28 to 75.
Yep.
I mean, it's not 24. But it's 2.8 all the way through, and it works on full frame.
If we come back to, I mean, this whole discussion started from one person's question, but basically they want a tiny little lens on their full frame camera.
Right,
and so
I see.
All those other ones that, sure, I'm sure they're happy shooting with those in some cases.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good use of your money to get a 24 that you'll just have to crop. You know, you'll just have to crop the picture. I don't think that's...
So I think a lot of people out there are saying, well, why isn't this 24? The 40 is. I think the 24, it is...
Because it's wider.
Yes. It's more difficult to make a lens, or not more difficult, but you need more glass to make a lens at a wider focal length for a full frame sensor.
Right. You have to bend the glass quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So,
moving on.
But at what point, where is it, you know? How much bigger, how much more? So I'm curious. It's getting into the science geeky bits of it, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this week you also had your very first guest blog post on the blog from Roy.
From Roy, who's been so nicely answering Facebook questions as well.
And he posted about monitor calibration. Now, I haven't read this, but I understand that you have, so do you want to just give a little preview? And
well, no, you should go read it. This is one of, outside of camera and photo gear, this is one of those questions that I get very frequently.
Yeah.
Probably more frequently than any other kind of question. And he has got an excellent write-up with a couple of different suggested options and step-by-step instructions on how to. He's even been in touch with one of the companies to get them to give him an updated color profile based on some of the stuff he found. So it's very good. Thank you, Roy. If you're interested in hearing more about monitor calibration, there's a link in the show notes right down below, but it's on the blog.
Okay, dream cameras. Oh yeah, so we got people's comments from last week. Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's mixed in. You know, I haven't gone through and looked specifically to pull things out. A lot of people are just selling their wish list because that's what I asked you to do for the giveaway for the little GoPro Hero and other stuff. If you look at the cover page of my Facebook page, cover photo of my Facebook page right now, it shows you everything that you will win if you have entered. One person called me out a little bit and said, you know, in your dream camera mashup, this is where we said we took all these different bits from other cameras, put them in. They said, you didn't say anything for Nikon. It's true, not because I have anything against Nikon, and if it makes you feel better, using the D750, I did forget to say I wanted an articulated screen on my camera, and this one from the D750 would be fine. So there I've added something in from Nikon. But some of them were...
Guys are so picky. People are so picky.
Right. They have opinions and they want to share them too, that's fine. Some of them were funny because they were very much like super high-end bits all mashed into what would be a little camera that would probably cost a lot of money. I can't find any of them now because there's too many comments on this thing. But I just wanted to mention that, folks, you should take a few times. Here's Brian's. The body of the 1DX, Sony's new sensors, 4K capable internally, the focusing system of the 7D Mark II, weather-sealed Wi-Fi, GPS, touchscreen, menu options for HDR, multi-exposure, headphone jack, 10-bit out, Canon EF mount, 1DX battery, hybrid viewfinder, definitely a full-frame sensor. It's pretty serious. I asked what would it cost. He said probably about $7,000. It's probably about right.
No.
You think higher?
Yeah.
That's true. Who would make it? Well, you said the body of the 1DX.
Yeah, that's a really big body too. I guess, you know, points for being realistic. Right. Like they probably couldn't cram all that functionality into a little camera.
Right. What does the battery of the 1DX look like?
It's like
how much bigger?
It's like two of the LPE6.
Oh wow.
The Canon, the 5D Mark III.
All right.
And 70.
Dave wants the A7, A7R, and A7S to have a love child. So something that is kind of a hybrid of all three of those.
Okay.
You didn't say specifically what features you like, but that's true. I do, if I could combine the silent shutter of the A7S with the 36 megapixels of the A7R, go back to the A7S and borrow some of that low light capabilities. It doesn't need all of it, just some of it. Well, see, Dave, I think there is a love child. I think the A7 is a mix of the A7R and the A7S because you've got a little bit better ISO.
And we're going to talk about it, right? Or the
new, yes, the new, yep. Okay. I thought it would be easier to find comments without, but...
we get the gist.
There's some good ones in there. So folks, take some time and thank you all for your comments. This is now the most commented video in the first couple of weeks of any of my videos that have ever gone up.
Cool.
I would like that to think is because you find our discussion so enthralling, but really you just want to win free stuff, and I don't blame you. It's okay.
Awesome. Speaking of the contest, will you remind us when it's over?
It is over next Friday. On Black Friday, I will pick a winner. Before that day is over on Eastern Standard Time, I will pick a winner and post on the Facebook page. I'll ship that stuff anywhere in the world. And if everything goes smoothly, I will announce the new contest that same day. I'm excited about the next round too. It is not any less. Don't think I started off high end and work our way down.
Why would they think that?
I don't know. It is just as good.
All right. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the week ahead.
Yes.
Which, spoiler alert, there's no podcast next week because it's Thanksgiving week. So we're going to be doing some traveling to visit family. And we imagine you probably are too.
Yep. The question is, what are we going to bring with us photographically speaking? That's the question.
I'm not really going to bring anything.
Not really going to bring anything. I'm going to bring enough for both of us.
Yeah, as you do always.
As I do always. Okay, so this is something a lot of people have been asking about. This is the Sigma 18-300. And I will be talking about this lens and matching it up against the Tamron 16-300, which I've already reviewed, but I want to see these two performing side by side to figure out kind of what is the battle of the new super zoom. These are EFS only, crop sensor only. I'm excited. I'm excited to try these. I got it right now on the 70D, so I will be talking about that. Not next week, but that's what I'm going to be working on next week. The D750 with the Sigma 50 Prime next week as well.
Yeah, and we will have a new photo critique out next week, so look out for that, as usual on Tuesdays.
A new photo critique and a way to add Wi-Fi to your 7D Mark II. That video will be out next week as well. And I'm going to follow that up. This won't be next week, but it will be soon. I like this. This is getting back to the roots of the mishmash. Those first ones where I was just like, I've got this stuff to review. And then you came along and made it so much better. I posted on Facebook a couple of days ago, teaser. What is this? And it was sitting in a little box, and all it said was case. And people had a lot of witty comments, or you thought they were witty. Dalibor went and looked it up and said, oh, it's a DSLR remote. This is a very affordable, brand new to the market DSLR remote. It's very similar to the DSLR controller system that we use.
Or Cam Ranger.
Or Cam Ranger, yep. But much cheaper and somewhat limited in functionality, especially compared to DSLR controller right now. But the good news is right out of the box, it just works for you. Whereas DSLR controller, I had to do some rooting and ROMing of the little Wi-Fi card. It wasn't actually hard, but it didn't just work like that out of the box. But a lot of functionality coming. The guy who was running this company has been extremely communicative with me. I've asked some questions and had some feedback and been responding very quickly and in a way that makes me feel really good about it. I've used it a couple times, basically, and it comes with this little thing. You know, it slides in here, and then the little USB goes in there. You talk to it with an Android or an iPhone app. Both are out now. And you can control your camera, control focus, make it take a picture, things like that. Which is, nice to be able to have that control coming.
Yeah.
So that I will be talking about more in the future as well. Oh, and here we go. This is funny. So I mentioned this last week along with the coupon code. I'll stick that down there below again. This is this kind of not really a GoPro, but looks and acts a lot like a GoPro. It does have a little LCD screen on the back. My favorite feature of it so far is that it doesn't beep annoyingly like GoPros. It does this kind of nice little chime sound. But if you read the reviews, Zach pointed out last week, I hadn't read the reviews. Not that they're terrible, but they all call it a car cam or a dash cam, which is one of those things that is much more popular in places like Russia. Everybody has one because when they get in accidents, they need to be able to prove that it was the other dude's fault. But one person called it a car cam, and then said that they really appreciate the fact that it's waterproof. Where are you driving your vehicle if you have a car cam and appreciate that it's waterproof?
Well, is it waterproof? Is it outside of the vehicle or inside of the vehicle?
Why would you stick your car cam outside the vehicle where somebody's just going to pull it off?
Was it permanently attached to the outside, or is it just on drives?
Well,
why would you leave it? Why would anybody ever leave it outside when it's unsupervised?
I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense.
The way I understand car cams to work for most people is it is kind of like a permanent hooked up in their car.
I see.
They start their car, it turns itself on, and it starts recording.
Well, maybe this person didn't know, and maybe this person's thinking that they'll attach it to the outside or some hidden place under the car, which would still be risky, but...
I just want to imagine that they're driving into lakes, okay?
Okay, nobody is.
Zach and I had this joke. They just followed their GPS right into the lake. We've all heard those stories.
Oh, it's an episode of The Office. Michael Scott drives his...
Do
people really do that?
Maybe, well...
Have people really done that?
I imagine somebody has somewhere, but... there are the stories of the people getting stranded out in the boonies following their GPS blindly. It even happens around here in Vermont because some of the GPS have older roads in their system, and you can end up down these dirt roads that aren't maintained in the wintertime. Yeah. Which actually becomes a bad situation.
Yep. Alrighty, moving on to news. So Fuji has released new firmware for the XT1.
You would think they have, because the top of this headline is, I should open that so people can see the top of the headline, is that Fuji updated now available. No, scheduled release date, December 18th.
Oh, okay.
It's not actually available yet.
So in a month.
Yeah, in a month. But You know, this has been rumored for a while. I think maybe even, you know, more official than rumored, but now here is the official post. Electronic shutter, so it's going to have the silent electronic shutter enabled now up to 1/32,000th.
That's pretty crazy.
Yep. I was just talking with Nathan, who was on the Italy trip with us, one of the instructors. Great guy. He shoots with a Fuji XT1 almost exclusively these days. Loves it. I'm going to talk to him in a little more detail in an interview in the coming weeks and share that out with you all as well, because I think it's nice to get he's a wedding photographer as well, and get a professional opinion about using this. He's excited about this because, I mean, why would you ever want that high a shutter speed?
So you can open your aperture up and use shallower depth of field when it's really bright out.
Yep. That's why.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, you know, some other color simulations, some updates to the EVF. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice things. What most people are excited about is the 1/32,000th of a second.
Yep.
What's next?
So we mentioned the A7 earlier in this video, or in this podcast, but now Sony has released the A7 II, which is actually really cool. Its big feature is that it has in-camera stabilization, which they're able to do by building or by having, you know, I don't even know how to explain it. Do you want to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, image stabilization, I think, is one of the amazing things, one of the most amazing bits of technology in our cameras these days, the fact that it can automatically be counteracting your handheld. In most cameras, it's inside the lenses. And the downside is if you don't have a lens that has it, then you don't have it with your camera. By adding image stabilization into the body, and they're not the first to do this, Olympus has this, the OMD series, the Micro Four Thirds. I actually have all the material for a review. I had those cameras for the AMD 1 and 5 this summer for quite a while, but I haven't published that yet. It just got behind and I haven't come back to it. But I really like them, and really good in-body image stabilization, so you can put on any kind of prime lens, any kind of older lens. This is good for Sony because their main issue is lack of lenses. Yeah. They have about 10 full-frame E-mount lenses. That's it, just 10 different kinds, which for some people that's plenty, but can feel limiting depending on what you want to do. And this opens up for more lenses.
Yeah, you know, actually, this does say that it is the first of its kind, which is what, so it's a 5-axis sensor shift image stabilization. So it makes me think that it's slightly different than the others.
No, it's the first of its kind in a full frame sensor.
In a full frame,
yeah,
okay.
That's our first time to do that. So that's a big deal. Yeah. And they've got, I have a quick blog post about this camera and its new features, and borrowed a video from Sony Australia or somewhere that posted some sample footage of stabilized and unstabilized shots. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, cool.
It's awesome.
I mean, I would be interested in seeing what this is like because I'm a big fan of the full-frame Sony sensors.
Yeah,
so
they're nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, lastly, the Loom Cube, a high-power external light source for your smartphone. What do you think about this?
Well, I thought this was well, it depends. I wanted to talk about this for a couple of reasons. One, a reader sent it to me. Folks, I love, if you come across something you think is interesting, feel free, tweet it at me, email me, post on Facebook. I really appreciate that. Even if you think I probably saw it. I may have, but send it anyway. Somebody sent this to me, the Loom Cube. It is basically this little LED cube that will light up, and it's small enough that it kind of can work nicely with GoPros. They look like they're going to be funded because they're 27 days to go, and they're just, you know, a couple $1,000s short, or about $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 short of their goal. It looks neat. I was curious though, because at 60 bucks, well, all right, second reason I was interested is because remember I bought that extra GoPro case? My idea was to shove an old LED headlamp in a spare GoPro case, and this winter, when the lake freezes over and the fishermen go out there and drill their holes in, I want to drop the GoPro down and have it recording video and just see what it looks like down there in the dead of winter. Probably be pretty boring, but I imagine that it's going to be quite dark when that ice is thicker, so I needed some light. So I thought this would be a fairly cheap way. I already have the headlamp, I already got an extra GoPro case, but I couldn't quite cram it in there as well as I thought without doing some major work, so the bits are sitting in a box over there.
So is this waterproof?
Well, here's the thing. So at $59 it says, and which I feel like is a very affordable price, you'll receive the Loom Cube Blue silicone sleeve in the Loom Cube. And so I wrote them and said, hey, this is great. Reader sent it to me. It's not clear to me at the $59. Is that waterproof or just water resistant? And they wrote back and said, yes, it's water resistant. And I was like, you didn't really answer the question, because I also said, can it go underwater? So I wrote them again this morning. They wrote back and said, no, not at the $59. We are making waterproof ones. And I think further down, you scroll a little bit further down around like the $179 mark, you get a waterproof case good to 100 feet.
But so, when are these? Is there an estimated ship date? I would imagine it's probably not for a few months.
That's a good question. Yeah. Yes. December.
Or several months.
February.
Wow.
February.
December.
Oh no, sorry. December was this $5 backer where they just thank you or something. February. I will say this about Kickstarters. Be prepared to wait. I haven't had a single Kickstarter deliver on time. I'm currently backing the Trigger Trap ADA Kickstarter. They are way behind. I'm a little bummed. I'm not worried about it because
it's understandable.
The updates, they're understandable when you're doing major manufacturing. And then the Nebo slider, I'm a backer of that as well. That seems to be on time, and that should be arriving here later in December or early January, which I'm excited about.
Cool.
So that reminds me, somebody asked me the other day, shooting 4K with the GoPro and other cameras, and if you shoot at 4K and then you only want to show 1080, you can do some cool slide effects, right? Is doing slide effects in post the same as putting your GoPro or camera on a slider and sliding it?
Well, wouldn't it be a lot more work to do, number one?
In post?
Yeah.
No, it's pretty easy in post.
Really?
I can. That's even something I can handle in Final Cut. You can say keyframe here, move over to here.
Oh, I see.
It's not hard.
What they're saying is that you could shoot at super high resolution and then okay.
Size it down.
I mean, you would still lose like a considerable amount of the frame, right? You would lose a lot of the top or the bottom,
right?
Or
you would have to shoot with that in mind, that you were only going to show part of the frame, but you can move within that frame.
Yeah. Well, that seems fine.
Yeah, but is it going to be the same as moving it in pre?
No. It's not going to, because things shift as you move the camera in the frame. Yeah. So I don't think it would be the same.
I think it would fool a lot of people.
Well, I don't think it would necessarily fool people. I mean, it's not like somebody would see it and be like, "Oh, that wasn't done with the slider," you know.
The slider snobs.
Right. I mean, surely there are some people who would say that. I am sure of it, but not necessarily. And yeah, to most people, it would just be like, oh, okay. Like, they wouldn't even think about how that was made, you know? So,
yeah.
Now all of you, forever and ever, will probably be...
You'll wonder. Well, okay, two things I want to say is parallax, right? That is
parallax.
That... Parallax. Parallax. Which is that the way objects in the distance move to your view.
Right.
Right? And it's how stars and how... scientists early on figured out what was closer and what was further based on how it moved. And so, as you move, things shift and you can see different parts of them. And if you're just moving the frame, it's flat. Even if it's a three-dimensional image, it's still flat. But, I think you can fool it. Speaking of how things are made, I posted the other day the Mashable's top 16 time lapses of the year. I love this time of year because of all the lists, which I will come up with a couple lists of my own soon. I love lists. Top 100 songs of the year. I don't actually listen to that one. Top 16 time lapses. I have to say, Mashable, you should have just gone for 9 or 10 or something, because there were several on there that I really...
quality of some of those were...
But the very first one, the Barcelona one.
That was interesting.
It's done differently than I've ever seen before. I'll put a link to that Barcelona one right down below. Or, I'll put a link to it right down below. And how did they do it? It's definitely, there is a lot of post-processing that has been done in parts of it, I think. But it's just curious. It's very curious. So go watch that. I like that it's different. We talk about this in our image critiques. One way to stand out in making an image is to be different. And time lapses now, so many people are doing them so many different ways. There's a lot of beautiful ones. This one caught my eye because it's different.
It was very different, yeah. Yeah, cool, so go watch that.
Yeah, it's got good audio with it too. I mean, I think they did a really neat job.
And you had here the NX1 review.
Yeah,
video,
so people, I also want to ask, those of you who are watching carefully right now, I can't make any promises, but what do you want to hear more about next? The NX1, the LX100? Tell me between those two. I think most of you are going to say the NX1, but maybe I'll be surprised. The NX1 is starting to ship, starting to hear some reviews of it. The very first one I've read here is on EOS HD website, compared it a lot. This is a very video-focused review, meaning that they're approaching this from the standpoint of video. They're quite positive about it, as most of us have been reading the specs. It does that 4K. It's got a new compression scheme, H.265, which is a bit of a pain to work with right now, but that means that the files come out much smaller than the GH4, but 4K still, looking just as good. The common theme I'm starting to hear from bits and pieces is that higher ISO performance really is not anything special in any way, both on video and photo side, but other features really nice. So, again, I can't make promises, but this camera is certainly on my list to review, and I can try to make it one of the ones that happens sooner rather than later if you're interested in hearing about it. The LX100 I'm really interested in getting my hands on as well. I think for a small camera, it offers a lot of really neat features. So.
All right. Well, let's move on to our discussion for this week. Do you want to introduce it? I read this and I found it to be an interesting article. But why did you include it?
Well,
what do you want to say about this?
This was what we were going to talk about last week, as I said, and I thought it came to me from several different places. It was posted on one of the professional wedding photography forums that I am part of, and I think some people even shared it with me. And I think it has a lot of good advice in here, summarized nicely in a lot of different ways that I thought would be great to touch on and then share our opinions of them. Basically, it is to aspiring professional photographers, what if the problem is you suck? Which is a great grabbing headline, because I think some people are worried they suck, and some people are completely oblivious to the fact that they suck. And so this comes with some advice about, how can you build your photography business? What is important to do? And also, I think it opens with the cold hard facts. Being self-employed is not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is.
Or can be tough.
I mean, it's really rewarding, but it is a lot of, there's a lot of stressful times as well. But yeah, so do you want to,
go through this list. Let's go through this list and share some thoughts.
So, number one is you suck at shooting enough pictures to make a difference. I think just making sure that you have enough experience to make solid photos that somebody will want you to recreate or somebody will want to buy, right? Which is not to say, this doesn't say you're a bad photographer and there's no hope for you. It's just that you haven't put in the hours to sort of build a certain quality that will help you get work. Mm-hmm. Because, it takes, what's that,
10,000 hours?
Yeah, 10,000 hours.
Malcolm Gladwell?
Gladwell, yeah.
Well, the subtext to this headline is, just because you got a camera for Christmas and you got some business cards, probably through Moo, which I've done before. They have free business cards, often quite nice. I'm not saying don't use that, but just because you've done those things does not mean you're a professional photographer and that the business is going to start rolling in. Also, This is number 2, I think. Your photographs suck. Number 1 and number 2 together, and we mentioned this last week, is your friends and family love your photos. They are not good judges of the quality of your work. And that's not you know, being mean. They are just being sweet, supportive, kind people, and they may really love your work. But in the greater scheme of professional portfolios, it may not stand up so well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're serious about doing photography as a business, I would just not trust your family members, because they just want to encourage you, which is great, because you probably wouldn't be doing this in the first place without them. But the reality is that they're not the people that are going to be hiring you. You need to ask people who are unbiased and can objectively look at your work and give you real feedback.
Yep.
So number 3 is your marketing sucks. And he's talking about a photographer that was really disappointed that he was being, that other photographers were lowballing him, you know, were offering really cheap pricing. And then the guy that wrote the author of this article went to the complainer's website and was like, well, you have a really crappy website. So I'm just being aware too of what you're doing. You know, do you have a nice website in place? Do you have a strong voice that is communicating with your clients, your potential clients, why they should hire you, why it is you that's going to provide the best kind of photography for their specific needs, etc., etc. So just, yeah.
And you do this, we can combine this with number 4, your presentation sucks. So really, people need to come to your website and very clearly know exactly what you're going to provide for them. And we're saying this, there's 2 ways you show this, both with the pictures and the text that you write about. So, you know, have multiple people read your little marketing copy. There's tons of services online that will, you know, proofread it and help you with that. Yes, it does cost money, but if you want to make money, you got to spend money at times. So those 2 things I think are really important.
Yeah. Number 5 is your list sucks. And this is referring to photographers who have been in the industry long enough to have a list of past clients and recurring clients who are pretty reputable and you know, that have allowed them to create a body of work that is strong and consistent and so forth. And so, you know, aspiring photographers won't have this list, which doesn't necessarily mean that they won't at some point be there. But, you know, if you don't have the list, you kind of have to hustle and create work for yourself that you can pitch to other people and then reach out to people, because people aren't going to come to you.
Right.
That you have to come to them. So,
well, that's what he wants you to do. He wants you to sit down and brainstorm a list of people whose services, who could need your services. So, and he's approaching this mostly from commercial photography standpoint. But I think there's lots of lessons here for all types of photography. So commercial, sit down, Google, you know, all the different businesses in a short drive from your house, which in some places that might be a huge daunting list, in some places might be pretty short. Look at their websites. What kind of product photography are they doing? Are they doing it themselves? Can you tell? Does it look like you could do better?
yeah.
So those are the people you want to make lists about.
And so that can also be combined with the following one, your client outreach sucks, which is, you know, if you continuously pursue businesses, you know, even if you get shut down and if you're persistent and just try to build a clientele, then you will naturally eventually have a list of people. But you have to hustle, you have to work hard. Number 7 is your portfolio sucks. And one of the things that he mentions is, you know, if you don't have an image from the last 4 months up on your portfolio, you know, it's misrepresenting your style and your vision. Because yes, I mean, your vision and your style is going to continuously change over time, you know, even from like, you know, the beginning of a year to like the end of the same year, or even in a span of a few short months. So I do think it's really important to constantly update your portfolio, and you know, the more you're creating work, the better you're getting. So it's worthwhile for you and it's worthwhile for your clients to see what kind of stuff you're up to right now, so that, you know, they know whether or not you can create that. And plus, the work that you're making now, you probably are making it so you can attract a different kind of client than you were attracting when you first started the business, or even like 5 months ago, etc. So yeah, so update your portfolio constantly. If you don't have clients, then set yourself up with shoots, either shoot for free for a couple people, or just create your own studio shoots, so you have sample shots. Number 8 is your brand sucks. And he says, not your logo, the one you got from Fiverr, that totally rocks. Next to the fact that you have no personal look, never return phone calls, have no coherent message, no visual style, and are late with every shoot. Seriously, next to that disaster, the $5 logo has it really going on. Yeah, this is a good point. I mean, when we talk about brand, we're not just talking about visual brand, which is a logo and colors and things like that. No, we're talking about from the way that you present yourself to the way that you dress to shoots, the way that you, you know, interact with others online. You know, that's one thing that I jokingly tell you, but I am kind of serious. There's this group online that we both follow, but Toby will occasionally go in and talk about stuff. But actually, you know, there's a regional wedding photography Facebook group that I follow closely. I don't really interact there that much, but I see, you know, posts that are made from other people. And some posts are really helpful and useful and are worthwhile commenting on. And then some are just really, I don't know, like unprofessional and tacky and not like, I don't know. So anyway, so you have these photographers saying things that are like anything that they say in that forum reflects directly on their business. It is supposed to be a secret forum that, you know, only the people that are in there, you're not supposed to, you know, take anything ever out of it. But it does make me possible. I mean, I form what do I want to say? Opinions based on some of the things that they post that, you know, show one thing or another. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things that they... for example, I guess I should give a specific example. This doesn't happen as often now, but in the past, people have posted pictures of clients, you know, that they shouldn't post, I think. Obviously, this is just opinion-based. Like, the picture's not going to leave anywhere. That's that's one of the rules of the group, that none of this should be discussed outside the group. But to me, I feel like if you're going to this group and you're, like, posting this picture and then saying negative things about it, then to me that shows you don't really care about your clients that much. And I probably shouldn't make that judgment based on just that. But that's what it says to me, and I would imagine that probably if the clients knew about this, they probably wouldn't be very happy. So anyway, I've gone on for too long. But that's just one example of how the way that you present yourself outside of your business and you talk to other people, and I'm not saying you have to be fake, I'm just saying you have to be really conscious of the way that you present yourself. And just, you need to be professional if you want to get professional work. Yeah. There are those people I think we see that have a really distinctive look and a style and look really unprofessional, but those are people that do amazing work and still hustled their butts off. And so. Like who? I don't know. Oh. Okay. Number 9, your gear sucks. So, you know, it's very easy to say, oh man, I can't make any good pictures because all I've got is this little DSLR and the kit lens or this or that. And remember, you know, owning fancy gear, all that requires is you using your credit card, really. Anybody can own fancy gear. So he's saying, you know, don't let that be a block for moving forward, and don't be like, oh, if only if I had that can I get to the next level. There are some cases, in some situations where lights and things like that can help, but hustle, make it work with what you got in the meantime, and really only look to upgrade when you need to upgrade. Yep. Yeah. And the last one, number 10, is you suck, which he actually, you know, I like this. What he's basically saying is that your attitude sucks. So kind of hand in hand with the gear stuff, the idea that until you have all of this gear, you won't be able to produce this kind of photo and you won't be able to get to the next level, is you having a really negative attitude and looking at things that you don't have in order, as a way to sort of take the pressure off yourself to not have to produce that work and make what you have work for you. So, you can be, another way to suck is to just be really negative about others around you, other photographers around you. And one of the things that he says, see everybody as a threat or as a competitor, which doesn't help anybody. I mean, it alienates you from everybody who could potentially be a resource or somebody who will support you or somebody that you can support and that you can help. You're comparing yourself to others constantly, and a field like photography is, a creative field is very up and down. And the freelance, just being a freelancer in general is very up and down. So sometimes you're like, yes, I am killing this. And some days you're like, why did I do this? I should just quit. I am not cut out for this. I mean, it's really it's that different. But the problem is when you get down and you can't get yourself out of that rut, it gets really hard for you to succeed. It becomes difficult for you to succeed. So, just being able to change your attitude, really control the way that you perceive things and the way that you feel about certain things, and instead of looking at things as obstacles and things out of your control, then whatever you have, which is just you and your perception and your attitude, that's what you can control. Just use that to, network with others and support others and be a positive presence and a positive person that, that will in turn help you in the long run, I think.
Yep.
So.
Good. That's it. Those are 10 of them. A lot of good comments on there. This was well received because I think the advice is very good. One of the ones that I like the best is be on time to everything. Huge difference, especially from a photography standpoint. It gives you a little bit of time to figure out the situation and have wonderful ideas when the clients are ready to go.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Just going to add that in as number 11. Be on time for everything. Okay?
Alrighty, so let's move on to some reader questions. So a couple of people want you to review the Tamron 150 to 600 millimeter lens. So
yes,
I think that's on your list.
That is near the top of my list, but what I think I'm going to do is make sure that I have that for my trip to Montana with the McKay Photography Academy. That way I can just really use it in some real wildlife situations, because otherwise right now it's going to be taking pictures of the neighbor's birds and things like that. So that should be a mid to late January review.
Yes.
I do hear good things about it, so.
Yep. So Roger Hunt is confused about back button focusing. He says, even after having read a fair few articles, any chance you could do a quick discussion on this and why some people, especially those photographing birds in flight, appear to say that it's the best method? I have the 70D, and so it would be great if you could use this camera as the example. So we'll use the 70D as the example, but really this works for just about any camera. You can set a custom button to be your back button. And the reason that you want to use the back button is because your shutter button, I should first say that I am a huge proponent of back button focusing. I think, You
think it's the bee's knees?
I think it's the bee's knees. So,
better than sliced bread?
No. But it's awesome. So I think that the shutter button should be just that. It should be a shutter button. I don't think you should have to press halfway down and then shoot, because, especially when you have a moving subject, what you're doing is basically you're like shooting and then the subject's gone, and then, as you try to press down, you can't actually use this button to focus, and so your subject will be out of focus. Whereas if you use the back button, that actually tells the camera, keep focus on this subject at all times, and all of this shutter button does is just take the picture.
Well, it does depend on what focus mode you're in to some degree,
Right.
whether
Well, yes.
that works or not.
It would have to be on servo mode.
Right. But the fact is, in a lot of cases, you get focus on a subject and want to take several pictures with that subject not moving. That doesn't really apply to the birds thing, but let's go with this for a second.
Okay.
And if you every time you're pressing the shutter, the camera's going to try to refocus if you're not using back button focus. And a lot of times that's fine because it happens quickly and it just takes the picture again. But there are enough times where there's a hesitation as it's trying to get focus, or it'll get confused, especially shooting birds in trees and branches with foreground material in front, and especially with longer zoom lenses, all of a sudden it loses focus, and now the camera has to go way out of focus, and way back in, before you can take your picture, and you've just wasted an immense amount of time. It is much more practical to get focus, take pictures, and then say, oh, I need to get focus again. So you were deciding. See,
right.
We're big proponents of you being in charge of your camera, and that's why we say pick your focus point. You know, you shoot manual mode so you know what it's doing. Your brain, after a little bit of knowledge and learning, is much better than the camera's brain, and you need to decide when you're going to focus again, and back button focus allows you to do that.
Yeah. So the other reason, and last reason, is that sometimes you will be, for example, taking a portrait of somebody, and you want to have focus on the eyes, because we've talked about this before, that when you're photographing a person, the focus should be on the part that you want the viewer to look at first, so that most of the time is the eyes of a person that you're photographing. So what you want to do is set your focus point on the eyes, and if you're using the front button, the shutter button, as your focusing button, you'll have to oftentimes focus on the eyes and then recompose the shot so that all of the, the face will be appropriately composed in the shot, and that will cause you to change your plane of focus, and so then the eyes will be out of focus. So there are ways to do it properly so you could focus and then just very carefully move the camera while maintaining your plane of focus. But that's really challenging. So when you use back button focus, you can just focus and then set your focal point. And what was I saying this right? I feel like I am.
Yeah, you're saying it right, but the critics out there are going to say, well, be careful when you're recomposing. If you're using really shallow depth of field, you're going to, and truly you should be picking the focus point that's over the eyes for the best composition, but that doesn't always work. Right, well, you don't have focus points on the entire frame. With some cameras. So, yeah. One downside to back. So if you want to take multiple pictures, you would have to refocus. Yeah. One downside to back button focus is when you hand it to a friend or a waiter at a restaurant, they will not be knowing enough to press that back button, and you'll get completely out of focus pictures usually. And you just switch it to A. Even when you have back button focus turned on with the 70D or any camera, it just got an error. Just got an error because the flash went. I think that's true. Doesn't the 70D when? Yeah, it overrides it. Even when it's on, it should override it. Oh, I have it in manual focus still. Yeah. Yes, I was right. So let's specifically, you said, bird photography. In that case, we're talking about flying birds. You have very little time. So you servo mode, you mash the AF on button down on the back, and then you can just fire, and all the shutter's doing is telling the camera to take a picture. It's not hesitating even a millisecond in trying to get focus or check if focus is happening. And that is why back button focus is nice for fast-moving subjects in general. Just start using it, and in might take you a few weeks to get really comfortable. You will say, oh my God. Yeah. I can't believe I haven't been using this sooner. Yeah. Next comment or question is from Kelly Jean. She says, I'm a newbie and suddenly have over 30,000 photos on my laptop with no real organization.
What's the best way program for a beginner like me to save photos so that they're more organized and findable when needed? I think, you know, for Apple users, iPhoto is a good way to archive them. If you're going to edit them, I would just say get Lightroom. Just go ahead and get Lightroom, because that's, you know, you can edit them and then you can also categorize them and archive them. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think
my suggestions.
Yep. We love Lightroom. First off. Second off, I think doesn't matter what program you use, iPhoto or Lightroom. I think the good schema for organization is start with year, month, day, some brief description. So 2014, 11/27, Thanksgiving. And there you go. And then have just those pictures in there. And you can, like, if you shoot a couple pictures a day later, they can be in that group as well. So then, one of the nice thing is, like in 5 years, maybe Lightroom is the worst and there's a brand new program and you still want to be able to figure out stuff outside of the program. And Lightroom will, of course, mirror these folders. It creates these outside of Lightroom. That's one of the things that's nice. People have trouble wrapping their head around using Lightroom. Where are my pictures? They're in whatever folder you're putting them in outside of Lightroom, and they're named whatever you're giving them in the folder in Lightroom. So it matches that. It's a mirror. And that allows you to go in outside of Lightroom if you feel the need to do that and find those things. The other big thing, and this is a bigger step, but is to start keywording. If you use Lightroom, you know, start tagging pictures, you know, Josie,
dog,
beach, goat. And then you can go and say, find me all of the beach pictures. I've done that with my pictures over the last about 10 years now, and it makes it so easy when I need to create little books as presents for people of kids and or parents. It's just really nice to be able to say, find me all the pictures of sunsets.
Yeah. Okay. Bill Malik says, any word on the Canon 6D Mark II release? I don't think so. In fact, we've heard rumors that I think have been unconfirmed that it's been discontinued, but we're not totally sure.
Well, the 6D has been, which should mean that the 6D Mark II should be somewhere coming sometime soon.
But we haven't really heard anything.
But we have not heard anything. I'm checking Northlight Images right now, which is kind of the go-to place for a lot of these things. It's expected sometime in 2015. That's all. I really hope it has a lot of the features of the Nikon D750, which is just a nice mid-level full-frame camera.
Yep, we'll see. Tom Furley, my gear collection's getting larger and I'm starting to think about storage. Any tips on keeping gear safe, etc. when not in use at home? I've heard you should use a dry box, but surely a camera bag should be okay. I think a camera bag's just fine.
Camera bag is fine, unless you're really living in high humid environments with a lot of humidity.
I would say if you're living in the U.S. in the winter time, I wouldn't worry about too much.
Do people only live in the wintertime?
Well, okay. All right. Well, in the wintertime, you shouldn't have to worry.
Right.
And then in the summer, I mean...
Yeah. We had somebody commented a while back, they said they've gone and gotten, was it from IKEA or the Container Store, those... like glass, they're little kind of boxy things that are clothish and have dividers for setting wine glasses in, and they work really nicely for lenses, and they have a zip cover close. I keep my stuff in wire mesh baskets that we got from the Container Store on a shelf.
Our house is pretty dry.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not worried about humidity. Even in the summer, the humidity isn't around long enough for stuff to start to grow, even on the older lenses. If you're worried about it in your camera bag, you can keep a couple of those silicone packets. I mentioned that last time. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let me see. I got lost here. Saeed Kuman says, hi Toby, I'm going to be buying the 70D, but I've seen some videos stating that a major negative aspect of the 70D is that you cannot adjust aperture during video and aperture priority mode, and cannot adjust shutter speed and shutter priority mode during video apparently. During video. Use punctuation, people. Apparently, the 5D Mark III has this, but the 70D does not. Would it be possible to examine this, and is it actually a negative? I thought the point of shooting video and gaining access to those settings was through the manual mode. Thanks in advance.
So what Sate is saying is when you're shooting on AV or TV in the 70D and shooting video, you can't actually, let's say I'm on TV mode where I want to change my shutter speed. In photo mode, that allows you to change your shutter speed and the camera adjusts everything else to match to keep your exposure wherever you want it. When you're in video on TV, you cannot. I was surprised to find. I've never tried shooting video on anything other than manual or automatic. And I'm not going to say that this is in any way a deal breaker, Sate, and here's why. Because you don't want to be live adjusting shutter speed. Shutter speed is actually kind of okay. Aperture, though, during video to change your exposure. Well, why would you want to do this in the first place, I guess is the answer. And that is if your exposure is changing over the course of the video, you need some way to deal with that. The only appropriate way I know that isn't going to really change the look of your video is ISO. So if you want kind of an automatic video mode, turn auto ISO on and then shoot in whatever mode you want. I think you should shoot in manual mode where you set your shutter speed, you set your aperture, and then auto ISO if you expect the light to really change over the course of your video. I was surprised to see that wasn't allowed. It's funny that it works that way. I wonder how it works on the 7D Mark II. Start to ask another question and let me see.
Yes, so Weilan Long asks, how is the minimum focusing distance on the new 24mm prime lens? Any examples you can show during the podcast? How does it go up against the 40mm pancake in that department? Is this something you discussed in the review?
I actually forgot to talk about it.
Okay.
So first off, interestingly enough, 7D Mark II totally allows you to change your shutter speed in TV and your aperture in AV mode when you're shooting video. Yes. Now, the second question. Close focusing of the 24 is quite good, 0.16 meters. Below the review video, I don't know if I'll get it into the show notes or not, but below the review video is a link to the supporting blog post, and I have a sample shot showing you really close to my Commander Strong action figure. It's nice. It's very close. The 40mm is 0.3 meters. So it's a significant difference and a noticeable difference. And again, you know, they call it a macro. It's not truly a macro lens, but it is good. It's good. What I meant to do is compare it to the kit lens 18 to 55. I don't remember off the top of my head what the 18 to 55 close focusing distance is. It's quite good as well, but not at 24. Its best close focusing distance is at 55, and that's where you're hitting that f5.6. So that's another a plus or pro to the 24mm lens, is that will get you quite close in this tiny little package, but don't pretend it is a macro, but quite close.
Steve Piper asks, I have a Canon 700D and would like a longer lens. Which one of these should I go for? And then he goes on to link the 70-300 4 to 5.6, that Canon 70-300, or the Tamron 70-300.
Yeah, they're both very similar. Truthfully, I feel like the Canon 55-250 STM is a better value. You give up a little bit of zoom, but actually, people, that 250 to 300 difference feels really small. And the quality and the value of that 55-250 STM is just really good. It's light, it's got very good image stabilization. If you're not going to do that, you know, the 70-300 is quite a sharp lens. I haven't spent a lot of time with that Tamron, but I've heard good things. I say 55-250. If you really want to hit 300, go for the Tamron.
Okay.
Because you save a little money, right? It's a little cheaper, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Matthew Maltby would love to see a review of the new Sigma 30mm 1.4.
Yep, it's on my list. That's a crop sensor only lens. I've heard really good things about it, with some people saying they have some focusing issues on the Canon camera, so I'd like to get my hands on at least one copy and test them.
Okay, Renee wants us to educate him to what cross-type focus points are.
Now this is a good question, because this is one of those marketing things that are like, it's got 19 cross-type points. Oh, it only has one cross-type point in the center. It has to do with how the camera gets focus, and it looks for these lines of contrast that it can basically match up. And on non-cross-type points, it usually only uses one direction, and that's usually just vertical, to match up. It works, but a cross-type point looks at both vertical and horizontal lines to figure out whether or not it's in focus. Makes it more accurate, should make it a little bit faster. And there are even some that are like the little octothorpe sign, the hashtag sign, sensors that are even more accurate. I'm going to send you to, for folks who are interested, CambridgeInColor.com has a wonderful understanding camera focus post that really goes into the nitty-gritty of this.
Yep.
But generally think of cross-type points as being faster, better, more accurate.
Okay. Vincent Cox wants to, or is interested in a review of the latest Tamron 18 to 270 millimeter lens. Simi says you're in...
Why'd you just read it and skip? I didn't let me answer.
Well, you didn't... you didn't seem like you were saying anything.
There is a new one. It's hard to keep up with all these do-it-all big lenses. I think that this Sigma 18 to 300, I'm going to put that against the Tamron 16 to 300. I don't know if I'll be reviewing any others anytime soon.
Yeah. So, but look out for that review though, because that's very similar.
Is there a newish Tamron 18 to 270? Okay, go ahead and start reading the next question while I figure that out.
Simi wants to know, which lenses are you testing the D750 with? Is it the 24 to 120 f4?
Yes.
And how does that compare to the Canon or Sigma 24 to 105 f4?
Well, it's hard because I'm not mounting them on either camera to match. It seems quite nice. It's definitely lighter. Your build quality isn't quite like that Sigma. The Sigma is what I love in that 24 to 105 range. Certainly sharper and better. The Canon seems, the Nikon 24 to 120 seems very nice. I'll have more to say about it in the full review. I'm also reviewing it with the Sigma 50, so then I can make some real clear comparisons between the Canon 5D Mark III and the Nikon D750, just because we kind of use that as our continual benchmark for full frame. Whether you make an argument that it should be or should not be our benchmark. But, and also that little DX 40mm lens, I'm using it with that as well. The deal right now at B&H for the D750, which is, I'm going to call it a brand new camera. It is basically a brand new camera. It has not been out that long. Bought with that lens is very good. They're offering a discounted price. I'll try to get a link into the show notes down below, but there is one on my DSLR deals page if you're interested in a general travel camera and you don't mind the bigger size of a, of a full frame camera. So I mean, here it all is together. Certainly not small, but it is smaller than the 5D Mark III, and this is a lot of range in this lens, 24 to 120. Really nice overall. Yeah. Great video quality too, it seems. Let's put it right there.
Okay, the next question is kind of a doozy.
Oh boy.
Michael well, not in the way that you think, I think. Michael McDonald wants to know, how big of a difference would he notice with picture quality from his current lenses, the Canon 50mm and the 18 to 200 kit, to other lenses?
I'm sorry, I was trying to do something else at the same time.
Michael McDonald says, how big a difference would he notice with picture quality from his current lenses, the Canon 50mm and the Canon 18 to 200, to other lenses? Michael,
what other lenses?
We don't know. You gotta give us a little more there.
Well, let's give you this. You're using an 18 to 200. I probably say this just about each podcast, but I have that little auto response that says, I am generally not a fan of do-it-all lenses. you make too many sacrifices to cram that much focal length in there. So don't give me the wrap up sign when I'm just starting to answer a question. So the 18-200 is, you know, it's an okay lens, but you are going to get sharper quality and less distortion from shorter focal length lenses. The Sigma 17-70 is going to be sharper than that. Now, the 51.8 prime, it's a decently sharp lens for the money, especially if you stop down a little f2. So you have to spend a good bit more or get another good quality prime to see much difference than that. So let me ask you, Michael, how much difference do you see at 50 millimeters between your prime and your big zoom lens? Let me know, and let's chat about what do you want? Do you want better telephoto quality, or do you want better other quality? You will see a difference. Will it be enough that it matters to you to sacrifice the convenience? I certainly recognize the convenience of these lenses, and that's why I do want to talk about them a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Wukush Grabsky says, you're filming a lot. Are you keeping all your films from YouTube and others? If so, where and how do you keep them? Films take huge amount of storage. How do you handle that?
That's a good question. I am currently keeping everything that I generate, and what goes up to YouTube is compressed. I have an 8 terabyte RAID drive right now, which is being used just to span. It's not being a backup. And I only back up part of that. There's a lot of video files that wouldn't be the end of the world. Once it's on YouTube, it's not the end of the world if I lose the original stuff. What I do go through, what also starts to really eat up space is all of the render files from Final Cut. So I've edited something and it makes all of these kind of like sub copies. And I go through and clear those out in some of the drives from time to time as well. I'm about half, I bought that drive in June, moved a lot of stuff onto it, and I'm about halfway through. I'm using about 4 terabytes of that space. So I will need to start backing stuff up to external drive and then just removing it from there and continue to work on it. It's a really fast drive, that's why I like working off of it. So.
Okay, and the last question, which we've already actually kind of answered, is you've spent a little time with the 24mm pancake, but if you could only choose one pancake prime for general walk-around use, which would it be? Which would be it? And the answer is, can't just choose one.
Well, they said if you just choose one pancake prime.
Okay.
So 24
again,
or 40. If
you can't.
You can. If I'm walking around with a crop sensor, I'll take the 24. If I'm walking around with a full frame camera, I'll take the 40.
Or because you don't have a choice with a full frame camera.
That's true. Okay.
Okay.
All right, and back to the Tamron. I don't think there's a new Tamron 18-270. There's just the one that's been released quite a while ago, and it's okay.
Alrighty. And then the other thing that people posted were just captions. Do you want to read those?
Yes.
For the picture? Okay,
I don't
go for it.
Can I do it off your computer?
Sure.
Because I didn't think. So I posted, but they can't see that little thing. So let's bring this little, there it is. I do have it. So I posted this picture of Commander Gordon Strong meeting Brushman. I just gave him that name. And where there's some fun captions. Oh, we're also, while I'm doing this, will you pull up the 24 names? And we will make this podcast 2 hours long. Who's still watching? I should give some bonus prize.
Can I get a bonus prize?
Your bonus prize is maybe I'll go buy you lunch at Milagros.
All right.
I can't find any of the captions because they're all
kind of at the bottom. Go all at the bottom.
Angela says you're going to need a custom helmet. I like that one. Kevin says, why so blue? Or is it your haircut? Oh, and he says, I walked into the hairdresser and asked for a flat top, and they gave me this. Roger says, if you stand next to me, you'll be in focus. I like that, Roger. That's good. Ubaldo says, there's still time. Troy says it was love at first sight. I think Commander Strong would love this Brushman because he'd keep all of his nooks and crannies clean. You don't know. What you got?
Okay.
So I asked, so the 40mm has a nickname, Shorty 40. The 50mm f1.8's got two nicknames, Plastic Fantastic or
Nifty 50.
Nifty 50. Well, this little 24, it needs a nickname, but 24 doesn't really roll off the tongue. So Danny says, the Dinty more. What else we got?
The Double Dozen.
The Double Dozen.
20 Plenty. Eh.
Not that we are coming up with anything better. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
right.
I like Jennifer. Here's a little culture for everybody. A Canadian would refer to it as a 2-4. We sell beer in 24 cases, and the 2-4 is a unique expression.
Cool. Okay.
You're gonna skip the softcore, hardcore 24?
Well, it's just a little.
I'd call it a softcore 24 because there's no.
The Jack Bauer. If you guys are into 24.
Oh, I just got that. I didn't like that show. After the first season, his daughter got kidnapped like 14 times in one episode or something. I was like, I'm not watching this anymore.
Let's see.
John's got Get More 24.
Yeah.
That actually does work quite nicely because it's one of our wider focal lengths primes we have available to us.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily roll off the tongue like
the Get More 24.
Get More 24. Terminator 24. 24 and No More. Adored 24. 24 Galore. Give you guys points for rhyming.
24
Good
galore.
rhyming. More 24. 24 Amore.
Not
24 I Adore.
And not one to ignore.
24.
And Diego says, super!
The Super 24.
Yep. So if you have any more suggestions for nicknames for the 24mm prime, I like Get More 24 from John.
The Get More 24.
Just leave a comment right down below. Do we have any other questions for you? Well, I asked you what camera would really be at the top of your list for me to review sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I've definitely heard you about the 150-600. As I said, I'd like to wait to January. But if you all show me sad faces, maybe I'll see what I can do.
Lots of sad faces.
I think that's it.
That is it.
Thank you so much for watching.
And again,
commenting.
We won't be around next week.
Nope.
No podcast next week, but we will be back the week after, promptly.
But I think we will have a little video out next Friday.
We'll see.
Yeah. Convince friends and family.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
For those celebrating. Safe travels. I will repost my blog post that I put out last year on some tips and tricks for nice group photos. This is a time where families are all together. I don't know why I'm talking. Nobody's watching anymore. No. And there's like 6 people that are like, I'm still watching.
All right. Well, thanks to you. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe.
And hit that thumbs up button. Thanks. Goodbye.